Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have Aram Grigorian back, aka 4 weeks to the beach, and he hasn't been on for a while, but a quick recap on our past episodes, which if you want to go back and look for them, you can even just message either one of us and we can get the link to you. But we spoke about this is taking too long. How long is this going to take? Weekends, cookies, drinking, the reality of eating out, the reality of holidays, and what the toned body really entails in terms of training and dieting. That was covered
What
in
what
past.
what year was that?
It was 2 years ago,
20,
actually. I can't believe it.
2022? Was it 22 or 21?
21, we did our first one, and 22, we did our second one.
I'll be interested to see if you have some of the same topics, if my perception of things has changed, because I bet it has.
Yeah, I reckon a lot of both of our perceptions have changed because I've noticed you've shifted a lot of your approaches, which I actually am so grateful for because I'm not like, he's not sharing that stuff anymore. He's sharing this stuff and I like it. So that's the thing, like people that aren't willing to shift their approaches as they get better, because as you get better, you do better. As you do better, you help more. As you help more, you keep doing better. And as you keep doing better, you keep getting better. And this is the thing, like relate that to you listening to this. You don't, well, you think that you know the right way to do things. You get all this information, you Frankenstein things that are based on your bias. It's okay to not know better right now. It's okay to be a freshie. It's okay to feel like there's no real means of progress because you're not doing things the way that you used to do them before. Because what's the way we used to approach things? Like, buy this program, get the program, start following the program, and then before you know it, you're yo-yoing on, like I mentioned, weekends out, cookies, pizza. Like, we can write you a meal plan, but are you realistically going to stick to that meal plan when your friend asks you out for nachos on Thursday night? Or when you want to go out on the weekend, or when you don't have your usual schedule on your weekend, or now that it's summer, as a busy mum, most of you guys are going to be running around with kids' sports, kids' activities, doing things outside. And if you're in Australia listening to this, what do you want to do in winter? Comfort eat. You don't want to move. You don't want to be motivated. This is why the coaching process is so important. And I will never, as per my rant, my story the other day, like, you want this for life. Freaking invest in yourself. Otherwise, stop complaining about the results you're not getting, because doing the same shit isn't going to get you new outcomes. And this is the perfect segue to get Aram to start talking about what he sees to be the biggest bottlenecks that stop people like you from getting results. People like you from changing the way things have always been, which left you unhappy, miserable, and wondering why you're working hard, trying this, trying that, and not seeing results.
I think generally speaking, what I've noticed now, and even just the last couple of years as I've been doing more and more of this type of coaching, and I work with mostly now women over 35, I'm just seeing a misalignment of expectations to reality. Um, I think it's probably partially due to what they're seeing on Instagram from the influencers that they follow and how the algorithm is curated for them specifically. Because all it is you're essentially telling social media what you want to see more of. So if you're a 48-year-old mother of three and you're following somebody like a bodybuilder or a bikini girl or a model or something like that, and you like and interact with those types of posts, then you're going to see more and more of that stuff. So that's what you're going to start now being inundated with as the primary messaging. And I just don't think that's realistic. So, for example, if you're a mother of three and you're 48 years old, try to follow fitness accounts or nutrition accounts that are in that demographic. And there's plenty of women in midlife who have reshaped their bodies, who have done a really good job of staying consistent, have talked about how many years it's taken them to really get the weight off. And they're very, very reasonable about their approach. So follow those accounts. They may not be as sexy, but at least the information that you're going to get from those types of people is just more applicable to you as opposed to the woman who's 40 or who's 27 years old and living with her parents and running a side hustle, but then also has an affiliate code to 30 different brands and clothing lines. And that's how she makes her living. And she can work out for 3 hours a day and she can party every weekend and she can weigh everything to the gram and be perfect all the time. Well, like, that's just not who you are. And that's not what your lifestyle is. And I think to frustrate yourself by looking at that stuff is really where the frustration starts. And you're choosing to look at that stuff. So start cleaning up your social media and cleaning up who you believe, and start asking yourself some deeper rooted questions about the validity of the information that you're receiving. Because if it sounds too fast or too good to be true, I don't know how many times you have to hear it for you to believe it, but it's going to take years upon years upon years to get this shit squared away until it becomes really a part of your lifestyle and your identity.
That brings into focus the topic of impatience. And it's not just impatience, it's what we think the process should look like. Like, people come to you, people come to me expecting results straight away. Also, not being real with what they are currently doing to get there. And I know that you make a lot of posts about this very same thing too, in that what do your habits look like day to day? What does your food look like day to day? What does your training look like day to day? Is it inconsistent? Are you actually pushing yourself on a proper program and not doing like jumping jacks and burpees and all of this plyo bullshit that you're sold because it's burning a lot of calories? And I always get questions, is HIIT really effective? I should do more HIIT. Maybe I should do more cardio. But then I get on the other spectrum. I'm eating my protein and eating well, and I'm strength training and lifting heavy. Why don't I see results? Lifting heavy doesn't entitle you to results. Eating healthy doesn't entitle you to results. And how much is that?
Well, back up for a second, because I think the words healthy and the words heavy are extremely open for interpretation, because my perception, heavy to me is heavy to me. Like, okay, heavy means, am I lifting with a weight appropriate for that rep range? Healthy is defined by the individual, and most individuals don't really have a definition for healthy because they've never really done the auditing on themselves to understand what's important to them.
And it's
healthy,
not quantified.
It's very much not quantified. And to me, I don't think health is a look. I don't think health is a certain body image. I've seen people that are morbidly obese, 400 pounds plus, that have better blood work than me. They have a better cholesterol number. They have a better blood sugar number. They have better resting heart rate. They have a better blood pressure than I do. I don't know how, but I've seen it. And then I've seen people who are fucking dick skin chiseled with 7% body fat and with every striation and every vein hanging out of their body, and they have the blood work of somebody who's about to die. So I don't think the aesthetic has any. I mean, obviously, people who carry around more body fat, not a good thing. People who carry around no body fat, also probably not a good thing. So probably somewhere in the middle makes sense for most people. But if you're somebody who's relatively frustrated, start to make deeper connections and definitions of what you're actually talking about, as opposed to just saying blanket shit like healthy or heavy, or making these very broad assumptive statements that have no context.
Yeah, and going back to each one of those spectrums, it's just like, what result do you want from the end? If it's eating healthy, most people still don't eat enough protein on a healthy diet, because 2 eggs for breakfast is not freaking enough protein. Having peanut butter and hummus on Ezekiel bread or high protein bread, although that protein bread has 8 grams, 12 grams, I don't freaking know. I just eat literally the whitest bread in the world is what I choose, because that's the bread that I like. And no, it's not going to make you fat. And I feel like all these misconceptions make people think that if they eat in this certain way, they're going to get results. But also, how consistent are you? And that goes back to the heavy question. It's like, how consistent are you with that? Is it progressively heavy? A couple of girls that I asked, what are you talking about with heavy? The exercises they chose for those heavy whatever, they weren't even conducive to building muscle over a long period of time. And some of them were doing heavy exercises in group circuits, watching a YouTube video. It's just like, it's still not smart. It's still not made for you. And I don't care what anyone says. Group training can only get you so far. Having a plan made for you that's tailored, not even that, it's just like knowing that you have a coach there that's pushing you forward on a plan made for you stops you buzzing around like a squirrel. It stops you hopping from this to that every 4 weeks. It stops you questioning and second guessing everything, because it's that accountability. It's that this is how we can progress that gets you to where you want to be.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, I wrote a newsletter about training today, just talking about the various variables of training. What I basically said was, if you want to understand training to a deeper level, then there's certain variables of the equation you have to understand in a deeper context. So, actually, you know what? I'll just pull it up and I'll tell you what the variables were, because I can't think of it right now because my brain is dead. But so basically, I talked about load, which is the weight that you use for an exercise. I talked about tempo, which is the speed of the reps that you're performing that exercise with. I talked about the form of that exercise. I talked about exercise selection in general and what needs to be considered when picking certain exercises. I talked about volume, which is sets and reps over time. And I talked about recovery. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion, this isn't like documented science, this isn't like a PubMed article anywhere, this is just what I've seen observationally over the course of 15 years of doing this job. Most people come to us with a desire of an improved body composition, right? They want to increase visible muscle mass and decrease visible body fat. In my opinion, the best type of training for that task or for that desired end outcome is hypertrophy-based muscle building training. Now, another word for that training, which tends to be a dirty word in our industry for a lot of women especially, is bodybuilding. That's what that style of training essentially is. It's bodybuilding style training.
You want to build a body, so it
correct
makes to do body like
I just think that the word itself tends to scare a lot of women who don't know better, because they equate it to a hypermuscular, almost unfeminine physique, right?
And they people can look completely not jacked up and puffed up and tanned up like a bodybuilder and still be taking PEDs. That is why they look the way that they do, because when you are natural, it takes such a freaking long period of time to build muscle. Like, I'm still trying to get my delts to pop 8 years later.
I mean, same. Like, I've been lifting. I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 this year. I've been lifting since I was 15 years old. I've been on the P's, and even when I was on the P's, it was a fucking nightmare to build muscle. It was such an all-encompassing, difficult, time-consuming task that I think women have this misconception that they're going to start lifting 40, 50-pound dumbbells and they're just going to start growing like weeds. If it were truly that easy, then I think most of the world would be in really good shape physically. I think there'd be a lot of muscle mass walking around, and there's just not. So I think that just goes to show you how difficult it is. And as you turn older, as you turn kind of 35 plus, especially if you're a woman, the rate at which you start losing muscle mass naturally just from sarcopenia starts to increase. And you have to combat that loss of muscle. So like this idea that like, especially as a woman, because again, I'm going to talk about in the context of women because I work with mostly women. But women are always taught this idea, or they have this misconception of always wanting to shrink themselves down to the smallest possible size, really ignoring body composition. So they're ignoring their ratio of muscle mass to fat mass. And I think that's doing them a disservice in a multitude of ways, both psychologically and physiologically, because if you keep shrinking yourself and that's what your mental focus is, then until you're smaller, until you reach that bottom, you're never quite fulfilled or satisfied or really happy with yourself. So you're never really truly ever satisfied. And that's a really horrible place to be, because that ends up being a moving target, because they're never really happy. Because I've seen people get smaller and they've gotten there and they realize they still weren't happy. And then physiologically, to keep getting smaller means that you're probably going to keep losing muscle mass with each subsequent dieting attempt, because most of the time when you diet, you don't just lose fat, you lose muscle as well. So if you're losing muscle naturally, then you're losing muscle through multiple dieting phases, and then you're just doing this over and over again, what ends up happening is you get that melted candle effect, and you start kind of looking like somebody who's very emaciated and is very weak, who has a very low level of bone density. And as you age, that becomes detrimental to your actual physical well-being and health. And this is where fall risk starts to become a problem as you age. Like, I know everybody gives a shit about their like bikini body now when they're 20, 30, 40 years old, and they don't think about what's going to happen when they're 60, 70, 80. But the reality is, you know, maybe at 20 years old and you're doing the bar scene and you're trying to impress guys. Yeah, that's cool for a little while. And then you turn 30 and then maybe you have a couple of kids and you have a husband who at some point you don't really need to impress anymore. So the only person that gives a fuck about your body weight is you. And then you turn 40 and 50 and you're fucking overwhelmed by life. You have multiple jobs. You have multiple kids that you're still raising. And now at this point, why are you still just obsessed with this idea of being smaller and fitting into a bikini that you put on when you were 22 when your life has significantly changed? So I challenge any woman that's listening to this to start to really recalibrate your goals, your expectations realistically based on what's going on in your life, and thinking about all of this from a quality of life perspective versus just an aesthetic perspective, because the aesthetic is really hard to accomplish and requires a fuck ton of focus and attention that you probably don't have the bandwidth for. Like, you are not going to look like Ruby doing what you're doing now. Ruby is a professional. She spends a great deal of time and effort into this. Her general natural habits allow her to have this lifestyle and body type because she puts in the effort when she's tired. She puts in the effort when she's not tired. She puts in the effort when she's overwhelmed, when she's stressed. She still meal preps. She still eats well. She has very strict rules and regulations about things. And it's not a loosey-goosey throw shit at the wall thing and see if it sticks. Like, she has a very serious outlook on this stuff. So you can't just phase in and out of these desires and then hope for the best possible result when this isn't truly a part of your lifestyle yet.
And that's the thing, it's making it a part of your lifestyle. But like, if you listen to please listen to my podcast with Ben, you cannot have balance and sustainability starting out, because your current balance and sustainability is what got you to where you are now. You need to push the edge of that for a temporary period of time, allow yourself to adapt to a new normal, a new balance, but realize that balance doesn't exist. Balance is a verb. You are always trying to find your balance within what you have. My balance back then, I was able to train 5 days a week. I was able to do all those things because, yes, I was like this 20-year-old gym chick, but I'm not this 20-year-old gym chick anymore. Like, I have responsibilities. I have a house to look after. I have dogs to walk. I don't have a 20-year-old's responsibility in my body anymore. Like, I didn't start here either, though. Those non-negotiables, I had no faith in myself. I sabotaged. I nibbled and picked and had terrible habits I wanted to break. But what did I do? I developed non-negotiables over time. I took one step at a time. Back then, there wasn't Instagram, there wasn't TikTok, there weren't all these freaking things that we have now to distract ourselves that all of you find yourselves intertwined with. And even if it's not just that, it's what are you distracted with? Life. Because life's got a whole lot busier as well. We're expected to do more, to be more, that it's a mark of pride to always be busy, to always be doing this, that, and the other. You don't even slow down. And something that Aram just said, you haven't allowed yourself to evolve with your goals. Your goals are allowed to evolve with you. And it took me a while to shake off my old goals, because I know I'm not going to get those same goals anymore, but I still care about my physique. I still want to build my physique. I still want to build more muscle, to look better, to get stronger. But it isn't the sole reason that I do what I do. I compare where I am now in terms of my energy, the fact that I feel freaking amazing and I have the confidence that I've never had before. I can run for 30 minutes without getting tired and still hold a conversation by the end of it. Things that I never thought possible before. I am in a place where I know that once I turn 70 years old, I'm not going to be crippled in bed, unable to get out on weak legs, looking like look around at half the people around you when you go outside. People on, sorry if this offends, but like skinny legs, big torsos, because they haven't built their legs. They've accumulated all of their body fat around their visceral area. They're probably hunched over because they haven't done enough weight training, which supports posture. Like, I don't want that for me. And you shouldn't want that for yourself either. And guess what? If you are 50 and you're resembling that, it's not too late to rectify that. It's never, ever, ever too late. You are your youngest you will ever be in this very moment right now. Yes, you're the oldest you've ever been, but you're also the youngest you ever will be. Start now, because you only ever keep regretting it. And all of these people listening to this in your DMs and in my DMs, asking all the questions, but not actually investing in getting a coach, not actually saying, hey, I need help. Can you design this for me so I can stop wasting my time, wasting my stress, energy, spending all my time focused so much on my body, on my food, on my training, have someone look after it for me so I can just move forward, look after what matters with my health, my fitness, blah, blah, blah. I'll just do the things and focus on what matters most, my family, my job, all the other things. And you mentioned this before as well with the training, with the volume load, blah, blah, blah. This is kind of where I want to merge this conversation into. You can touch on what I said as well if you want to, because I feel like that's really important. But people feel like they need to do more work than they realize, or they start with us. And because they're paying a certain amount of money, they should have this perfect program with this perfect meal plan. They should have this habit, that habit, this habit to start. But then you wonder why you always go back into the yo-yo, because you think you have to have all of these things sorted out in order to feel like you're succeeding. And if you don't have all of these things to work on, you're failing. But how about we scale it back and focus on the one thing, and then leading it back to the training? They feel like the more work, the better. That they do this exercise, it's going to be more effective. But usually that leads to body decomposition, because you can't recover. You can't give your best every session the same way that you would on a SMART program. So you aren't building muscle. You could be losing muscle because now your performance is degrading. You're not able to eat in a conducive way. So you're probably gaining more fat than anything, because if you're training that hard, what do you think is going to compensate? Snacks, nibbles. Most of you don't eat enough protein, even though you think you do. Like we said, eggs, eggshell bread, not protein. But one last thing, let's talk about what stopped you getting results before, because you can have all of this perfect shit, but you can make progress 6 weeks, but then whatever stopped you getting results before is going to rear its head again. This is where coaching comes in, and this is why it's so important, because if you approach any amazing program with the same mindset that never got you results before, what do you think is going to be the outcome?
Yeah, and I like what you were talking about, just the evolution of and the maturity that people go through when they've been on this ride for long enough. I want it to be truly a ride versus a roller coaster, because for too many, I think it is a roller coaster, as opposed to like an actual enjoyable ride where you can kind of stop every once in a while and enjoy the scenery. Because if you're doing all this work, you want to be able to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor a little bit, right? You want to have that heightened level of energy. You want to have that confidence. You want to have some level of a positive mood. You want to have some enthusiasm. You want to be relatively satiated throughout the day. You want quality sleep. That's all of the stuff that drives quality of life. And once quality of life is the focus, the aesthetic kind of naturally starts to improve on its own, because those variables are now in place. That's your average behavior. But what Ruby was saying about, the different elements that of your control, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. I totally agree. But what I'll add to that is I'll say that when it comes to body composition, again, this is my opinion, I think there's essentially 3 pillars. You have nutritional quality and quantity. So how much food you eat and what kind of food you eat. You have training frequency and intensity. So how often do you train and what are you doing in your training sessions? And then you have rest and recovery, which can encompass things like recovery from training. It can encompass soft tissue work and mobilization, and it can encompass mental health, because that's part of recovery as well. So if you're thinking about what variables of the equation to control, the big rocks are going to usually be the simplest and most basic ones that you don't want to believe in. And once you control those big rocks, you can start to make more decisions and have greater outcomes, because now you can follow a protocol. And if your life gets in the way of that protocol, you don't freak out and quit and jump ship. Maybe you start dialing back your effort a little bit because this season of your life is just too busy and you have other things that take priority. I mean, for all of us that have been in this long enough, back earlier this year when I was prepping for my event and the event was taking most of my bandwidth from me, I wasn't focused on body composition. And I had just gotten through my Achilles surgery in October. I was walking, but I wasn't walking in with any speed. So like my life was in a different position. I wasn't really focused on trying to be my leanest self. I wanted to be my healthiest and my most highly functional self. But that didn't mean that I was, I wasn't training 5 days a week, and I was okay with that. I was eating out maybe 2 or 3 times more than I usually am, and I was okay with that. But I was also making sure that the decisions that I was making were pretty damn good. So if I was going out to eat, I wasn't ritualizing gluttony, which I have a problem with, admittedly. Like I have a problem with really over consuming and overindulging when I go eat out, because I'm like everybody that's listening. I think of it as an event, and it's like, well, who knows when this is going to happen again? So let's eat as much of it as fucking possible.
That's
and
important.
And for me, I can maintain my weight at 3,300 calories. I bet that if you're listening to this podcast, you're nowhere near that. So if you can't maintain your weight at over 2,000 calories, you don't have a ton of flexibility when it comes to things like meals out and indulgences. So you have to be naturally more careful than I have to be. That doesn't mean that I have to suspend all care and all attention towards this stuff, because I still have to pay attention to it. But I just have naturally more physiological flexibility, more metabolic flexibility because of my years of experience, because of my muscle mass, because I'm a male, because I'm on TRT, and because I've spent years eating in an excess of calories that have built my muscle mass. But if you're a woman who's kind of in that 140 to 190 pound range, and you're kind of teetering at 16 or 1700 calories, and that's where your weight kind of just sits, well, you have to start figuring out what direction you want to go in, because a deficit is what's going to make you lose fat. So that's going to be what, 1,200, 1,100, how long are you going to maintain that for? But if you start to kind of bump calories up slightly, and I don't mean a lot, like don't go from 1,600 to 2,000, but go from like 1,600 to 1,750 or 1,800, up your non-exercise activity, like really hone in on like how much steps you're taking a day, like how many steps you're taking a day, and just walk everywhere. Stand as much as you can, walk. Don't worry so much about cardio. Yes, cardio is a tool for cardiovascular health, and it does have some energy output capability, but it isn't the holy grail for fat loss in the least bit. And then put all of your eggs into the weight training basket. Get really, really good at hypertrophy-based progressive overload strength training, and get to an expert level at it. Like I really do think that people need to get to a point where, if I was to ask somebody like, hey, how do you bias your lats on a lat pull down? And you should be able to tell me, like, how do you bias your quads on a squat? All my clients can tell me that, because I teach them the intricacies of biomechanics. And I find that to be valuable, because it makes training more fun and less mundane. Because we're not doing these hip hop ab bullshit jump around classes. We're going into the gym, usually either a home gym or a public gym, and we're just executing really boring basics. And that does get to be a little mundane. But if you understand the intricacies and the variables at play, you now have a golden ticket, and you have a little bit of a dangling carrot in front of you, and it makes things a little bit more exciting.
Don't just go into the gym to lift weights from A to B. Like, actually focus on the movements and how they feel, because that's going to be a lot more enjoyable than just trying to see how much weight you can lift every single week. Because there comes a point where you can't just keep PRing, and then you're going to let yourself down. You're going to beat up on yourself. You're going to get injured. You're going to set yourself back even more. Chasing PRs every single week does more harm than good. Now, if you're a beginner, yeah, you can. This is the reality of progress. As a beginner, you will make fast progress over the first few weeks, but then what? And you can't just say, oh, this program's not working, let's get another one. That's exactly why you're not seeing results, because you think as soon as you stop seeing these amazing PRs in the gym or your numbers going up, that it's not working anymore, let's start a new program. No, that's when you're actually starting to build muscle tissue. The other part was just neurological changes. You're getting better at the skill of the exercise, which if you change your exercises every single friggin' program that you do, you're always going to be in that novice stage where you're not really seeing any changes, because you're having to learn a whole new exercise all over again. Even if you've done it before, your body needs to get back used to it, which will take less time, but it still needs to adapt to it again. And then you get stronger at it. And then the muscle morphology, AKA changes, start to happen. Start to focus on the feeling and realize that the more that you have to fight for those reps, the more that you're realizing that your progress is actually going down some weeks and then up some other weeks. That's where the magic is, because you're fighting for it. You're fighting to even keep it, meaning muscle needs to change. It needs to get stronger. It needs to grow, because right now it is struggling to keep up with the demands that you're putting on it. So now it's going to grow. And you mentioned something important, and that was when all of that was happening, we still had our non-negotiables. And they just weren't the same. Like, we had our minimal effective dose. And the thing is, you're going to suck at this and you're going to keep failing. You're going to end up fatter over time if you don't give yourself the ability to be a beginner and learn how to tolerate this stuff. But what do most people do? I'll start with you and everything is perfect. I can't focus on this right now. Can we put coaching on hold? Can I just wait until this period settles and then I'll come back? It's like, okay, if you can't learn to slow the fuck down and realize that this actually is valuable, this is actually worth it, this is what makes sure you get to where you want to be long term, you're going to keep ending up in the same situation where you don't know how to deal with these circumstances, and life gets busier. more apps are going to come out. And even if you're not someone that's always on apps, life just seems to get more chaotic as we demand more of ourselves. I'm reading this amazing book, 4,000 Weeks, and the one before it was called Scarcity Brain. Highly recommend them both. Because, which, did you read any of them?
Scarcity Brain, yeah.
It's so good. Like, it's the whole industrialization, the bringing in of new technology products. It's supposed to make our life more efficient, but it actually has made us want to do more, get more. It's like, as much as we've been given to make ourselves have more time, like we have a microwave now instead of having to do things by hand. It's quicker than the freaking big oven. Like, we have things to save our time, yet we still find that we have even less time as years go on. And this is why it is so important to just freaking act now. And there was one more part that you mentioned that I want to touch on before you ramble on again, and that's the whole, you can eat 3,300 calories. I have designed my lifestyle in a way that this little midget of me, yes, I'm going to put myself into the bracket because I am 5'1" and a bit, 5'1.7" if you want to be technical, because I'd rather be a 5'2" because I don't know, it's just cool to be taller, but I'm a shorty. I've used to maintain my body on 1,600 calories while I was training my ass off, like proper maintain. I used to think I had to eat 1,300, 1,200 to maintain, but properly, I thought that I could only eat 1,600. I did, I'm getting really close to the mic if you can't hear. I did cardio, but I did cardio to build up my aerobic capacity so that I can burn my fuels more effectively, which gave me more energy, which allowed me to perform better, which made my hypertrophy training better, because so many people do not know how to burn fat at rest. So we're always friggin' just burning out carbs and our glycogen, and what does that lead to? Us having cravings at night all the time because we aren't metabolically flexible. And you don't just create fat out of thin air. It's not like not doing cardio is going to make me fat because I can't burn fat. That's not how it works. It's still calories in, calories out, but the thing is, you get more effective at that shit. You become better at training. Anyway, after improving my cardio health, because I was a powerlifter, I had no cardio capacity, all that kind of stuff, I was able to eat about 2,200 calories more. And then the biggest part of all of this is I built up my activity outside of the gym. I still do 2 days of cardio, well, 1 or 2 days of cardio a week, depending on how I feel. I try to get in 2 days, but you know what? I realized that the end result of all of this is to improve my life. It's not the end of the world if I don't get in that second session, because sometimes I need to listen to my body, and I have been tapping it out. So maybe I might need to have 1 day of just 2 basic runs, or maybe 1 week of just 1 run. And this is where it comes in. It's like, what are the big rocks in your life? For me, my big rocks are my 4 training sessions. My runs, as long as I get 1 in, that is my non-negotiable. If I get in the second, that's a bonus, but I would prefer to get in 2 sessions. It's just, I'm not going to beat up on myself. The more that you beat up on yourself, that isn't going to help. And most of my food choices, if not all, are minimally processed foods, because not only is it enjoyable, but I built this lifestyle over time to a point where that's just become my normal. I will only eat things that aren't minimally processed when I go out to eat, because I'm enjoying them so much more in the presence of other people, not scrounged up by my pantry doing whatever else. And it's like, I enjoy my food. I make it enjoyable. I don't eat bland chicken and broccoli. It's just what I enjoy. If you're someone that needs dessert, that's ice cream and chocolate, then plan that in first and make sure that your protein, your veggies, your fruits are all planned around you getting in that dessert, if that dessert is needed for you to be consistent. Because it's not about deprivation. It's about knowing what your non-negotiables are. If you're not willing to say no to that, then plan it in first instead of sabotaging every weekend because you feel like you're so restricted. But that wasn't even talking about what I wanted you to talk about. They don't make menus and tailor our food environment in little tiny bubbles for every single one of us, tailored to our calorie intake. If you didn't have that mindset of trade-offs, that it's not all or nothing, you would have had a worse outcome. You would have been a friggin' Oompa Loompa hobbling around. probably orange as well because you had too much freaking nachos and Mexican cheese. But you wouldn't have had the energy or clarity to do the things that matter most in your life for that event. And I think that's where a lot of people find themselves. It's like, you don't know how good you can feel until you start to improve your baseline habits. And I want you to talk more on that part because people don't seem to understand that these habits aren't something you just revolutionize overnight.
No, I mean, I'll give you my story because I think it's a nice comparison for basis. So like, I started lifting weights when I was 15 years old from a place of desire for vanity because I was insecure. I wanted to get attention from women. I was deriving all of my self-worth based on whether or not women found me attractive. And I started to lift with the football team because they were the ones who had a structured strength training program, and they were the ones who were the biggest and the fastest in the school. And I jumped on the football team to lift weights and learn how to do it. I was very fortunate that the strength coach that was part of the football team was ahead of his time unknowingly. He was like unconsciously competent. So he like knew what he was doing, but he didn't really have an intention to know what he was doing. He was just like a fucking meathead, but he was just ahead of his time. So he was actually very smart about his execution. He just didn't know how to explain it. And he also kind of a knack of talking about recovery and talking about nutrition. So at a very young age, I implemented this stuff into my life and I never looked back. So when I was in finance in my 20s and I was sitting at a desk around a bunch of other people that were 30, 40 years old, and I was 20, I was the one that they were asking, like, hey, why are you eating this and not ordering from our lunch menu? Or why are you having green tea instead of drinking all the coffee that we drink? Or why are you having all these berries? And why are you microwaving egg whites and all this other stuff? Because we had a pantry full of food that was free, and it was beautiful stuff in the pantry. We had cartons of egg whites, we had fresh berries every single day. The restaurant options on our app that we had to order from that our company paid for had salads and plates of meat with vegetables and fajitas and rice bowls and poke bowls, but people were still ordering pizza and pasta and bullshit. And I just realized, I'm like, it's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just that they've lived their whole life like this. So they don't know any better. It's not because they're unaware. It's just this is truly their habit. This is their style of eating. This is all they know. So I don't like to fault people for having this type of behavior, but I will fault people for having unrealistic expectations about changing their behavior because you haven't given yourself enough time to allow it to become ingrained into your lifestyle, because there's going to be so much resistance and so many obstacles at first when you start adopting these changes, because they're going to feel overwhelming. Because if you're used to eating convenient foods, well, it's very inconvenient to meal prep. If you're used to grabbing and going and having no structure, it's very much intentional to have a structure. So these things require thought and planning and processing, and that's effort. So it's very unnatural for people at first. And I'm fortunate. I've started at 15. I never looked back. So I have a 25-year head start as a 40-year-old man, when most of my friends who I went to high school with and played football with, who are in great shape, have now let themselves go because they never adopted those habits as a lifestyle. They continued to eat whatever the fuck they wanted in their 20s, and they thought they can get away with it forever because their activity levels were high, and then their activity levels became 0 to none. And they started to accumulate body fat. I mean, most of my friends that are my age, if I went home actually back in February and I saw a lot of my friends at a birthday party, and outside of maybe one person, people were probably 30 to 50 pounds overweight, and they were very unhappy and unhealthy. And I was getting a ton of questions. I'm like, guys, this is not the time and the place. I'm drinking, I'm having fun, I'm partying, and I don't want to answer your fitness and nutrition questions. If you want real guidance and real help, hire me and I'll help you. But like, I'm tired of repeating the same bullshit over and over again on deaf ears, because at the end of the day, are you interested or are you actually committed to making a change? Because if you're committed to making a change, then anybody in the world will help you because you're open-minded and you're coachable and you're ready. But if you're just kind of interested, like let's put it this way. The idea of playing the guitar for me is so sexy and so romantic. I would wish every bone in my body was like, oh man, I would love to be able to play the guitar. I'm so interested in playing that musical instrument. But if I had taken any actionable steps towards learning how to play the guitar? Have I made any time in my schedule to buy the guitar, to find lessons online, to do any of that stuff? No, I haven't gone through any of those actionable steps. So in 5 years from now, if I keep romanticizing how amazing it would be to play the guitar, but I've taken no steps to do it, I don't get to complain that I don't know how to play the guitar. It's literally that simple. But food is going to be a part of your life forever until the last breath you take. Your body should be moving forever until the last breath you take. So unfortunately, those are skill sets, or rather fortunately, I think, that you should be interested and committed into acquiring. And you should put levels of effort into remedying the problems that you have with your relationship with food. And you should learn and invest time into learning how to properly move your body and keep it healthy. And there's nothing more in this world that I hate more than when people say, I don't want to have to think about it. Because this idea that I don't want to have to think about it and it's supposed to just come naturally, intuitively easy for me, it's just unrealistic. If you're somebody who works in finance and you have a mathematical brain, is it intuitive for you to draw a beautiful piece of artwork? Probably not, because that's not how your brain works. So if you wanted to become an artist, it would take you a shit ton of time and effort to do it. And you wouldn't be like beating yourself up over the fact that it didn't happen in 2 weeks. You'd be like, okay, cool, this is a process. Learning how to eat properly and learning how to move your body and instill these habits into your lifestyle are just like any other skill set. And you have to be patient.
You can kind of think of it, if you're right-handed, writing with your left hand, left-handed, writing with your right hand, like at first, you need to really, really think about it. You need to really focus on it. And yes, you think about it less over time because now you can fluently, well, maybe after a few years, you can fluently write with that hand. But you still need to think about what you need to write because your brain is still connected to the hand. The hand doesn't write on its own. And that's the same with the food. Like, I know you have the same stance as me, and I put up a controversial opinion on my Instagram a while ago about everyone should, actually, I'm going to read it because it's so important. And I know you said something on your post a while ago about tracking your food isn't just for weight loss, and that's exactly the biggest point. I feel like the reason why people find it so difficult to track, find everything so difficult around food in itself, is because they've only paid attention to their nutrition in a means to restrict, in a means to punish themselves, in a means to earn something, in a means to degrade themselves. But what I wrote is, yeah, you should probably track everything that you eat. People will spend decades following a bunch of random diets, losing and gaining the same weight, wasting precious moments of life, quality of life, obsessing over and spending thousands of dollars on gut protocols, cleanses, ineffective supplements, detoxes, and hormone balancing programs, hoping to lose weight or speed up the process, and then say tracking their food is too extreme. The thing is, tracking is not as disordered or obsessive as your current relationship and approach with food and how much you pick your body apart. Now, if you sit with that and realize that your way of doing things is not serving you, that maybe something in the loop is not working, then maybe you can start to make progress towards something that actually works. And you know what? Focusing on fat loss isn't going to help you if that's all you focused on for your whole life. Focusing on the scale, using the scale, if that is your sole metric, I always say 6 months, go without it, just to focus on how you feel. Because like you said, with the habits and actions that you do, it, the process of learning the guitar, it's like you're never going to become a master at the guitar without focusing on the process. If all you do is focus on the scale without focusing on the habits and the lifestyle and the shit that actually matters for at least 6 months, then don't be upset when the scale is not doing what you want it to 6 months down the line. These 6 months focusing on your habits, getting a coach so you make sure that those habits are the right ones for you, so you stay consistent with that plan, tracking your food, showing up to the gym, fluctuating each of those based on what you can realistically do each week and each month without sabotaging with the all or nothing, then you can get to where you want to be. Because if all you've been doing in the past was not working, how is forcing a faulty system harder going to suddenly make it work? It's faulty. You need to rewire the quads. You can't just WD-40 a faulty system. Like, it can make a faulty system probably chug along for a little bit longer, but in the end, you're still going to need to update that system. Just like your phone can, one of my phones completely shut off on me because I did not update the system on time. That's kind of like you, but it's a good thing that I actually have a recent phone because the other one just won't turn on. But that's the thing, like it will stop working eventually because it's outdated and they want you to pay money for new freaking products all the freaking time. And that's the same with these companies. They want you to keep needing to buy the same 12-week program over and over again. And I know you know like Luke Lehman and you know Ali Gilbert, and Luke Lehman has been my mentor since 2018. But the first thing he taught me was these people go to these 12-week programs. And it's funny because I get all of these, this is him, I get all of these people all the time showing me their progress photos between the 12-week programs. And every single time, they're a little bit fatter. They have a little bit less muscle. Sometimes they're a lot bit fatter, a lot bit less muscles. That's how he said it. And that's the thing. And I've had people do, over here, we have like a Maxine's challenge. That's like this, I don't know whether you've heard of it, but it's like a Maxine's challenge. I've had 2 people come to me from Maxine's. One of them was actually a brand ambassador for it. So she was being a little sneaky on the side, not doing the shit because she knew that it wasn't going to get results, but she was getting free product and money for it. But I still coached her. It's just that she wasn't allowed to like say anything about it because she's a Maxine ambassador. Anyway, she looked worse over time because of that very fact. And I had a client sign up with me a few months ago who had many weight loss transformations and they were amazing. But they were like, she wasn't weight loss transformationing in a linear line from here to here. It was every single time she gained the weight back. Every single time she was more unhappy. She was obsessed with the number on the scale. And now what is she obsessed with? Training like a freaking badass. And what is the result? She had to buy new clothes.
That's the best possible outcome. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I think it stands to the patience that you have as a coach. That's why I respect you so much in this industry, and you've been at it for so long, doing it the right way. And it's hard because it's frustrating for us too, because we do want the best for our clients and we do have their best interest in mind. But I think what clients or what even people on Instagram viewing our content don't understand about what we do for a living is that we are in the business of eating your negative energy all day long. And it's not easy to absorb that much level of negativity every single day and still have a positive outlook on humans, on human behavior, and just be able to see the good in the world, because it's hard. Because what am I being bombarded with every day? I'm being bombarded with people's problems, with people's dissatisfaction of themselves, with their body image issues, with their relationship with food issues, with their disorders of eating and their disorders of expectations. And it's really hard not to be pessimistic towards all of this. But what I will say about all of this in general is that I don't ever want to invalidate people's desires for improving their aesthetic. And I know that we always try to thwart the focus away from the aesthetic. And that's not because we're trying to, Ruby and I are trying to invalidate that you want to be leaner or that you want to look better, because I think that's a very noble desire. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm very vain. I understand. I want to look a certain way too. But I've spent 25 years working towards mastering the basics. And then I've kind of earned that aesthetic slowly over time. So if you haven't spent years mastering the basics, then I think hyper focusing on the aesthetic all of a sudden and being very fixated on it now at an age where it's going to be harder for you, because if you're starting to train properly at 48, or if you're starting to eat better at 50, well, you lost 15 or 20 years of built up habits to get to the place you want to go. So you're going to have to expect that this process is going to take you a significant amount of time. So even though you have this burning desire to change the way you look, you have to put in the steps and the effort first and take the timeline out of it for some amount of time until you start getting really comfortable. And if you were to audit how you eat and audit your lifestyle, that you would look back at it and say, wow, I actually eat consistently very well. I make really good choices. I don't eat out much. I sleep early and I get up early and I'm prepared for the day. And I prioritize strength training 3 to 5 times a week. And I have no problem getting my water in. I have no problem getting in my steps. I'm not reactive to stress. I cope with stress really well. I'm overall a very pleasant, enthusiastic person. Those are all really good signs that you're going to make results happen at some point soon. It's not there yet, but it's going to get there. So I think that's the pursuit that I really want to drive home. And I said this today on a story post. I said, I'm not a fat loss coach. I used to be a fat loss coach. I think I started in this business wanting to help people with fat loss, but I don't give a shit anymore. I really don't, because you're going to lose and gain weight the rest of your life. What I care about is, can I make a positive impact on your habitual daily actions? Can I leave you with a better mindset than I found you with? And can I be contributory to the betterment of your quality of life? And if I can provide those things for you, then I've given you tools that you can now deploy for the rest of your life at any time you feel like it. And you'll have a much better relationship with all of this stuff that's much more reasonable and accurate and realistic. That's the job I want to do. If you put on 4 pounds while we work together for 6 months, but you gained autonomy in the gym and you gain confidence in the kitchen and you have systems in place for meal prep and you know what to order when you go out to eat and you stop relying on convenience items, I've done my job. I don't care about the fat loss.
I second all of that. And I feel like that's actually a really important part to drive home. I started off as a comp prep coach, getting people on stage. And I then started coaching powerlifters and getting people setting crazy PRs that they've never seen before, because that was what I then specialized in. And then COVID happened and I realized that so many people just want to feel better. They want to live better lives, and that so many people are just chasing this end outcome, but they're gaining all the way back. They're never really happy. And that's when I did my own internal reflection and I realized this very important part. And that's, yes, it is actually really hard as a coach. Like, I pull my hair out sometimes after check-in days. I have the worst quality sleep because it is in my head. Even when I journal, it's just like, oh, this client, like, we freaking care about your goals, but we can't care about them more than you will. But these hard conversations, it's like, these aesthetic goals, the reason we're driving you away from focusing solely on that is because you can achieve the most amazing physique and never realize it, never see it, never care, still beat yourself up, still have the same negative self-talk, the same terrible relationship with food, maybe even think that you need to eat 1,400 calories forever, or you're so friggin' scared of gaining any ounce of fat that you're not living your life. Because that was me for years. And I look back at old photos now and I'm like, I just gradually let my body get worse over time because I did not realize how amazing I looked there. Like, that photo in 2018, I looked freaking amazing. And then you just see a graduation of worsening of physique until I had that pivotal moment where I realized that it wasn't serving me anymore. And it's only then, since then, that I've been able to get to this place where I'm freaking, yes, I still want to improve my body. Yes, I still have things that I'm like, that could be better, but I love my physique now. I am proud of it. But why? Because I do the freaking hard things. Like, I push myself to do things that I'm uncomfortable with. I push that last rep. I focus on the action steps. Like, I'm showing up for myself in as minimal as I need to show up for myself and maximal as I need to show up for myself. But that's the biggest point there, because it's not getting a body for you. It's changing your life so you can view this whole thing in a different way. And the end result is going to be a body that you can be so freaking proud of, because you can say, I did this, I built this, I know how to keep this, I also know how to keep improving this, and I know how to train like a freaking badass, I know how to train for longevity, I know how to do all of these things, and I'm proud of myself because I kept sticking through the hard thing. I didn't go into another 1,200 calorie diet the moment I got uncomfortable. I didn't add on another shoulder, leg, glute finisher because I didn't feel like I trained hard enough. Do you want to sum it up? Because that's
I always appreciate talking with you, and hopefully it doesn't go another 2 years before we do it. And it's hard with this fucking time change for us, but we make it work. If there's anything I want to leave your audience with, it's just the idea that I want you folks to be enthusiastic. I think enthusiasm is a very lost art. There's not a lot of personal pride anymore. And just something as simple as keeping your promise to yourself. Like, I know that after I eat dinner tonight, I'm not going to go into the cupboard and reach for anything. I promised myself that tonight. So that when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'm proud of the decision that I made, and I'm proud that I followed through with it. And the more pride you can build in your decision making, the more confidence you'll gain. And if you show up to everything in your life enthusiastically with a positive attitude, because so many people are just moping around, miserable, upset, unhappy, waiting for something to improve. That negative energy is so hard to just be around all the time. Like, I'm so fortunate that I've surrounded myself with enthusiastic, positive people. Think about it this way: when you go in for a cup of coffee in the morning, and there's two baristas, and one of them is smiling, talkative, energetic, she's listening, she's making eye contact with you, and the other one's got her hat over her face, and she looks miserable to be there. She doesn't engage. She doesn't care about what you have to say. She doesn't look you in the eye. What type of day you think you're going to have for the rest of the day if you interact with one person versus the second person? And what type of perception are you putting out into the world? And that matters. So anything you do in this life, do it with enthusiasm. Give it the best, honest possible effort you really truly have, and just understand that you have a battery just like a cell phone, and it's not finite. It's going to run out. So charge it constantly.
That part, charge. You need to recharge. And I think you actually dictated the name for this podcast as well, because I loved the part where you said that think of this as a ride. You want this to be an enjoyable ride, not a chaotic roller coaster, not a frantic mentality with all of this. So I just wanted to bring that back to the end of this podcast, because it was probably the most important thing that Aram said for you to listen to, because that encompasses everything that we just said. You want an enjoyable ride, an experience of enthusiasm, of experience, not a chaotic roller coaster where you don't even have a chance to breathe. So with that,